Great, I think we're now live, are we? We're all good. Thumbs up from someone out there if you can hear me. Excellent, thank you. I think we've still got people sort of rolling in through the door. No, music was about to start. Music now finished. Excellent. We've still got people sort of coming in, but we'll get going nevertheless. Patrick Kidd, CEO of the Future Skills Organisation, thank you very much indeed for giving your time today to come and listen to this webinar, which is going to look at some of the work we've been doing over the last 12 months around entry-level pathways into technology. So we've got a great panel. We're going to get an introduction to the report, which you would have seen, and then hopefully a good conversation about what this is and why it's important. So just before I get going, I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're all meeting. I'm here in Melbourne, where I'm on Boon Wurrung country, which is the First Nations people who are part of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present. Just to sort of set some context around this work, a key part of what we've heard from industry, now that we've done sort of like 3.5 workforce planning cycles, is the need for people with the right technology skills getting into the marketplace. So that's into employment. And there is a general frustration, for want of another term, that sits around the product that comes from the tertiary system. And by that, I mean higher education, I mean by VET. And so that's about ensuring that there are people who are coming into the workplace with the right skills which are relevant. And when you look at the ICT training package which sits in the VET system, that has been kept up to date. There's lots of good stuff in there. There's lots of great training that happens around that training package, but it's not really organized in a way that the industry can understand it and therefore empathize with it and therefore use it. The fact that we use terms like ICT when that language doesn't really make sense now as far as the employment market is concerned is in itself a real challenge. And so what we tried to do is to take an industry-led view as to what careers into technology look like, and therefore to use that as the absolute base foundation for how you then design qualifications. So what does industry want? What are the skills that they want? And then let's design qualifications that meet that. And the absolute foundation of that are understanding what employment pathways are. And so this particular piece of work is about trying to surface those employment pathways, and for those employment pathways to be industry-led and industry-owned. So industry sets the demand signal against which the education training sector should respond. And so this is an attempt to try and be clear about what that demand signal is. It's industry's voice. It won't be completely right. Everything moves and it moves quickly. But if we can get it mainly right, we're going to be in a much better position as we start to then look at how we reset our training offerings throughout the tertiary system so that they better meet the needs and expectations of industry. So that's what this work is. It's super important as you start to think about the training packages. If we don't do this type of foundational thinking, we will just continue to reinforce the things that don't already work. So really interested in your commentary, your questions, and to see how this conversation goes in terms of this work and why it matters. I'm going to hand across now to Betsy Gregg, who comes from the Australian Computer Society, who has led this work from their side, and she's going to give us a quick introduction into the Pathways report and hopefully bring it to life for you before we then cut to the panelists. Betsy, over to you. Good luck.
Thanks so much, PK, and I appreciate the scene setting as well. I'm delighted to share a bit more about the work and where we've come from and where we're here today and where it can take us into the future. This, first and foremost, is a skills-led approach to building the ICT workforce, a common language that both industry, educators, and learners can take and use as guidance into their next phases and ultimately into the industry itself. This is a new way, as PK said, to understand and foundationally design and access ICT careers. And it's grounded in that real industry demand and capability need, which I'll go into in a bit more later. Working with FSO as well as C4 Digital, this has created clearer, faster, and more inclusive entry points into the workplace. The aim is for it to remove bias and complexity and inconsistency that we know is prevalent across the system. Next slide, please. So looking at that problem in more detail, next slide, perfect. What we've heard is industry is facing a growing disconnect. So employers are struggling to clearly define what they need. What is an entry-level role? What makes somebody ready to take it on? And on the training side, our outputs aren't consistently aligned. So they may not be reflecting real tasks, but they relate back to a role classification or a domain, but it's not actually interpreting or integrating then into a workforce domain. Individuals also then take the brunt of this, and they are faced with concerns around, well, how do I enter? What does this qualification allow me to do? Where can I go with it? And then, unfortunately, this creates hiring decisions that rely on proxies. So think degrees, years of experience, some shorthand to try and wade into the waters. Speaking with employers today, when they are hiring, they are struggling not only to identify what skills they need today, but when educators then come to them and say, well, what do you need in the future? They're not prepared to answer those questions, with full clarity. Given the tech industry is moving so quickly, trying to prepare and support qualifications and their design changes and their cycles is quite challenging. Ultimately, entry-level pathways aims to then support and improve that function. So the result of all of these problems then is a major friction point at that critical junction between an entry learner going into career. Next slide, please. Now the pathways aims to fix this, supporting clarity across the system. As PK said, this has been quite a journey, working both with Deloitte, C4 Digital, and FSO. We've shifted our approach from a job role, job title, to a skills-based pathway. Now, this reflects real capability needs rather than role labels, and it ensures that we can share, as I said, a common language, creating more clarity then around what is job ready, what are the skills we need, and with those skills comes some amazing insights. So for this engagement, we looked at 40,000 job ads, and we could see right away there's some big gaps between what the roles are classified as versus what's in the market today. One of them standing out considerably is a need for stakeholder management skills. In addition, we spoke to multiple employers and stakeholders around the country, and they're looking for more of those soft skills or professional skills, problem solving, adaptability, and the demand just isn't showing that in today's classifications. So this is leading hiring managers to go even broader with their client pools or talent pools, looking at hospitality industry and others, places where they can get that customer relationship skill and those professional attributes to enable those entry-level roles. By harmonizing and ensuring that these pathways reflect that demand, the outcomes are clear, supporting better hiring, better training design, and better career access. Now, as we break down the pathways, next slide, there's a practical skills-led model here. So when you look at a pathway, you should see it in 3 dimensions. What you do, so the technical or the professional skills, how you operate, the digital capability, and how you work and adapt, the human and transferable skills. This creates then not just a theoretical approach, but an actual real-world use case, providing clear industry-led guidance. Now, we want industry to use this not to help now with their hiring and to ensure that there's clarity around what they can also expect, as well as for our training providers and others to use this to help them design qualifications that enable learners for industry. Individuals can also use this then to identify, what can I do with my skills? Where can I go? What's the advancement opportunity for me in this pathway? Next slide, please. So pathways, therefore, harmonize many different stakeholders across the ecosystem and create a shared system of understanding, supporting, as I said, employers, educators, and learners, but also policymakers and planners, aligning decisions around a common definition of skill and capability. This ultimately has a huge impact on the market, and it is a key enabler Next slide, please. As this is a massive shift in how we look at tech skills and the workforce readiness, creating more transparency around these pathways and what all can do to support them. A better and greater adoption of skills-based hiring. So again, removing that proxy approach. You need a degree as a minimum. You need this many years of experience as a minimum, and injecting real entry-level roles. There's also a faster time to productivity for new entrants. So with clear expectation, they can be clearly ready. And stronger alignment between skills, supply, and demand. While we talk about this today as this iteration of skills demand, note that this is something we can do foundationally and ongoing as a model. This isn't something to set and forget. It's something we can draw upon more broadly and ongoing. With this approach, then, it should also be improving our access, diversity, and mobility, as that transparency that we talked about. It creates broader access and use. And lastly, this is a foundation for adapting to AI-driven change. There's a lot of whispers, of course, in market and concern around, well, what's going to happen to all this work? Well, this provides us a means to look at it. In fact, in the pathways provided today, we can already see where AI impact is expected and how we might see that augmented into skill. Again, helping employers understand what they need to look for, but also helping training providers prepare for that augmentation long term. The pathway ultimately becomes practical, scalable, and future ready. In the 9 pathways, which we'll get into very shortly, you can then see how they're aligned to OSCA, and it provides a structured view of skills and work in a given area. It also shows progression across those roles. So there's 34 roles accounted for in this program across 9 pathways, and they're all grounded then in SOPHIA, the Digicom 3.0, and the Critical Core Skills Framework. Again, it's about how the work is actually performed, supporting both industry today and leaving those legacy occupation classifications. Next slide, please. Now, I'll just leave you with a bit of a teaser. These are our 9 entry-level pathways. You can see how they're mapped against diplomas and Cert 4s and beyond. But I'd invite you to check out the link to C4 Digital on these pathways, get in the nitty-gritty, explore, as there's a lot of insights and learning to take from it. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Back over to you, PK.
Thank you, Betsy. That's great, really good tour de force around the report itself. Obviously, there's lots in there, there's lots of data points in there, but those core ideas, which is the idea of skills, pathways, jobs, that's really what this thing is about, and trying to make those transparent and accessible so that it sends that clear demand signal into the system. So I'm going to sort of cut across now to our panel, and we'll have a bit of a conversation around that. Not quite sure where it's going to go. We'll see what happens. But really, a really good, diverse panel. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves very quickly, and then we'll get into the conversation. So, firstly, welcome Laura from Anyway. Please just give us a little sort of couple of minutes on yourself and Anyway, please.
Thanks, PK. Great to be here, and thanks, Betsy. That was brilliant. I am Laura Scott. I'm Managing Director for Anyway. We are a new kind of careers tool that is absolutely supporting everything that Betsy has just spoken about. So our whole mission in the world is to help kids find their thing and align passion to career paths. So we have a very interactive platform that kids can go and test drive careers so that we can have and give them meaningful opportunities for the future.
Great, thanks, Laura. Peter, you're out there somewhere.
Yes, hello over here, and thank you so much for the opportunity today to be part of this fantastic panel and fantastic cause. My name's Peter Marinis. I'm the Regional Director at Hayes Technology across Australia and New Zealand. As you all definitely would be across, Hayes Recruitment is a core pillar across the community for our customers and candidates, helping match and find the right talent for obviously our end clients, but also finding and transforming the life of a candidate as well in finding the right home for them. So my role as heading up the technology business, and I've seen all sorts of examples where we've helped people come from humble beginnings out of a graduation from university to finding their first role. And I think this topic today, I can't wait to deep delve and talk about how important the skills are and how you can transfer that knowledge into the fantastic landscape that FSO provide to upskill and find your first job as a graduate. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Peter. And last but not least, Yas.
Thanks, PK. Hi, everyone. I am in the role of Future Skills Lead at Microsoft. I lead our strategic partnerships in education across K-12, vocational and higher education. So I see very large scope and landscape around skilling, and I really am trying to help navigate workforce needs around digital skills. So there's a lot happening in this space. Education is absolutely essential to how we navigate some of these challenges. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Well, let's get into that then. And I think really what I want to start off is sort of like the pain point. Like, what's the thing we're trying to fix for? And you're all going to have different perspectives. Like, Yas, you come from industry, so you've got a really good view of that. Peter, you got the privilege of sort of sitting right across, the industry sectors that we're talking about here. And then Laura, you've got a unique cohort, which is the sort of like the lifeblood really of where we're trying to get to in the future. So just ponder sort of like what's the thing that we're trying to fix here, and just bring it to life a little bit for the audience around why is this work important? What are we trying to achieve? What are the pain points we're trying to address? So I'm going to go to you first, Laura, and talk a little bit, from a young person's perspective about, the challenges that they're trying to face and what that means, and then what therefore this needs to be able to do to help address that.
Thanks, PK. So I want to start with some pretty confronting stats in that 92% of the youth, so I'm talking about Gen Z, are actually thinking about their future, which is awesome. So that's brilliant. They're out there, they're thinking, but 38% of them have no idea what they want to do, which is scary. So scary for many reasons. It's scary for industry, and it's scary for them. So they've entered a different world than me. They've got a lot of noise that is circling them at the moment, from, having a phone to getting on an e-bike and going to school, to all of the different things that are hitting them on a day-to-day basis. And what they're telling us is that they're stressed and there's high levels of anxiety. So the other pretty crazy thing is there's about 47% of the youth at the moment, they're considering the same 10 careers, which is crazy to think how many careers are out there at the moment. And they're mainly considering the same 10, which is what we did when we grew up. Doctors, lawyers, nurse, designers, architect, police, actors, psychologist. So from broadly speaking, I think the problem is giving and allowing kids to have more transparency over what careers are actually out there and what the pathways are, which is exactly what we're talking about now, what the pathways are to actually get there. So going and helping them at a younger age to support them to choose the right subjects, to support them on their journey then out of school.
And then in terms of, it does, absolutely. Thanks, Laura. I'll just ask a supplementary. So in terms of sort of like, what do they do to address that? So like 92% are thinking about their future. I'm not sure my son's part of that 92%, by the way. I think he might be in the 8. The 32% no idea what to do. Like, what are they doing to try and address that?
So they're actually yearning for experience, but unfortunately, experience in industry now is huge amounts of paperwork. So plug for Anyway is what we're trying to do is give them virtual work experiences. So day as a zoologist, or day as a lawyer, and actually go and have a taste of it, go and learn a little bit more about it, and connect with industry, because they're out there and they're yearning for help. But at the moment, they're telling us that they're incredibly stressed about it.
Great. Okay. Well, not great, but that's
Yeah,
but
not
thank you.
great.
But thank you for that. So, Peter, do you see the same thing? And I'll be really interested in sort of like young person's views of the world, but also the mid-career types. And I think there's always an interesting question when you start to look at the technology careers. Not there's this natural sort of mindset that says you've got to have people who are good at like science, technology, engineering, and maths. But is that really true? So,
Yeah.
what are you seeing there?
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And I think in the day in the world that we live in, and we actually reported, obviously graduate roles have been in decline in certain parts of technology, right? But I think with the evolution of AI in terms of what we're seeing in the skill sets, and I'm sure there's people on this call where they have been playing around on AI, right? There's something called a vibe coder, people that are at home playing around on AI, plugging in prompts and probably being really good at it, right? There's some of the jobs of the future. So I think what I really love about the planning in terms of the platform that you guys provide, in terms of certifications and all the rest of it, is supplementing that soft skill element to the technical part, in particular with moving forward and what tomorrow's jobs will look like. At the moment, though, from intriguingly from a customer perspective, there is an appetite to hire graduates, right? It's about unearthing these individuals, like Laura touched on, and as you said, Patrick, earlier, and I think the ACES also play a key role in this. But it's like how all of us end up in our roles today. Everyone's got their own unique journey, and I think that's something we always forget. I never studied technology, but I'm really passionate about what I do. Right, it's about the investment in terms of the area that you want to go in, and also about getting an opportunity. So there's different ways to get the opportunity to step into that. But I think fundamentally it starts from your first job, like how you show up, the drive, the passion you've got, all the soft skills that you can actually acquire in those roles. I think we really underestimate it, and that's probably never changed, Patrick. Probably over decades, right? You got to learn somewhere, and how you communicate, how you interact, how you show up, your critical thinking, problem solving. When someone's in that situation of high pressure, how do you react, right? And it's that problem solving skills that I think would be absolute fantastic for those graduates to really be proud of it, to own it, and then go in the pathway of going, wow, what are the areas that are really niche at the moment? What are the things that customers are looking for? And I think before it got shown on the screen, right? Areas like cybersecurity, data, AI, development, integration. There's areas where people are screaming out for individuals, right? But I think it goes hand in hand. You got to be able to provide those soft skills element. That's something that we constantly hear from our customers. There's no point being real good from a technical standpoint if you can't interact with the team and can't get the best out of a collaborative and team environment. And at the moment, and particularly from a Hey Salary Guide report, we just released very recently, actually, the generation perspective between 19 and 29, right? There's stats where 57% of employees believe their skills are current and relevant. So that's quite interesting, right? So what can we do to upskill that population? Because organizations, 82% of the organization between that age demographic are reporting there's a skill shortage. So I think from that perspective, we can bring those two worlds together, soft skills and technical skills, provide people an area. And I think before someone said the word transparency, clarity, and where the progression needs to come from, we can really unearth the next talent. Because again, the $1 million question is, we all started somewhere. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I studied financial risk management. And I'll tell you one little story as well. My dad, he was in the IT sector for many, many years. He actually decided to get out. 14, 15 years later, he had an epiphany. I want to get back in. And it was funny because some of the soft skills that he acquired in running his own business, which was outside of technology, actually enabled him to find a home for him in his next stage in his career, right? And that's someone who's completely out of the sector in an evolving technology landscape who managed to find a home. But he never would have found that home if he didn't develop those soft skills, right? So it's quite interesting, just to give you a couple of perspectives there. But yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea, in particular for the audience, to really hone in on those soft skills, those things that you can learn every single day, and it's about how you show up. I think particularly.
Oh, great, thanks, Peter. I'm gonna come back to you in a second, just after Yaz gives us some perspectives. But the question I just want you to ponder is really just linking back to what Laura said. 47% of people are still considering the same 10 careers. So my question I just want you to think about is like, are technology careers actually careers of choice? Have we got like the right people coming into them? Do the right people think about them? Are they being made accessible to people who actually are the strength of the workforce? It's the diverse workforce, it's the gender balance, it's the ethnic balance. It's really bringing the broad pool of people into those careers. Or do you think we're still sort of, fundamentally white, pale, male, stale? But just ponder that, and I'm going to come back. Yes, I want to come to you, please, because like you've got so much experience in this space in terms of not just working for, large tech companies in terms of sort of what you do with Microsoft, but also just in this skills space. What's your sense of it in terms of, the challenge that has to be addressed if we're going to be able to move forwards in the right way?
Yeah, so the awareness piece is huge, PK. Just creating awareness of these opportunities. I have a 16-year-old daughter as well who I'm going through this with right now. So aside from my professional observations, I'm seeing it from a very personal side. You didn't mention teaching, Laura. I thought that would come up in one of the top 10, but she's choosing to be a teacher because I believe she understands what that role is and she can see a very clear pathway toward it, and it gives her confidence to pursue something that she can see and understand. Obviously, she has some personal attributes that relate to that, but I could also see her being very successful as a AI strategist in education. Now, how do we get Savannah, my daughter, to see that that is an alternative pathway for her from what she can see? And I've thought a lot about this, and you would think I might be helpful in that, but of course she doesn't listen to me because I'm her mother. There are all kinds of interpersonal aspects to this as well, but I've sort of directed her to different tools to explore careers, other than the one she's chosen, to try and sort of edge her toward, other possibilities. And the problem is there are disconnects in that journey as well. So, you might have a little experience over here, having a taste of a career, but then you go to look at the courses that you would pursue, or the degree that you would pursue, and you don't see that reflected there, right? So that's a massive confidence buster, right? Because suddenly you're like, and they're very savvy, I'm gonna have to pay thousands of dollars for this, and I don't see that job reflected in this particular pathway. So I lose my confidence. So I go back to where I feel safe. So there are all kinds of other elements like that, PK, that are feeding into this. And then also, they're more aware than ever of the challenges, right, in the workforce. We're all talking about them. They are very exposed to headlines, particularly the negative ones, about how work is changing. And so, they're trying to figure out their place in this. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they're going to what they think are the safe occupations, right? So if we're not, and back to this work, this amazing work, which is giving us evidence and, some real data to pin to, if we're not changing our mindset, so it's not just individual interventions. We need a whole new mindset around how we're presenting these pathways as a system to kids and also to career changes, right? And when I play this out for Savannah, I think, okay, so she'll end up doing teaching. In 10 years' time, she might decide she's really interested in AI. Great. And she might see a job at the New South Wales Department of Education for an AI strategist. And I'll say, told you, but we got there in the end. What I expect will happen over that period is that we create a much more fluid system, right, with options to take micro skills or micro credentials to augment the skills that Savannah is going to need to get into that role. Because if we follow the findings in this report, she will have all the transferable skills that are needed. She will have deep domain knowledge because she'll have been in education. And hopefully by then, employers will also be able to see that it's not such a big leap to hire somebody who doesn't have, exactly the skill set that we think should have been represented in their degree or qualification, which is also a myth. There are no straight lines anymore pretty much to any role, because all roles are changing really rapidly. So we have to accept that, and then we have to back into the system and make some decisions around how we're going to make this easier for people, especially for kids.
And I think that's that last point you get to there, I think is such an important one. I mean, at the end of the day, we have this incredible education training system, which sits across Australia. Like, it's unbelievable, isn't it, when you think about it, the privilege of having access to this. But by definition, that's a slow beast to move. And so we've got to be able to provide clear signals that enables that education training system to realize its potential. And I think that's where, this sort of conversation takes you towards. Just going back to that sort of last question. So, like, technology and technology careers, like, is that like in the top 10? And if it's not, why is it not? And what should we be thinking about there? Can we go, maybe Peter, give me your perspective on that?
It was interesting, and I think what Yasminka said as well, it really does resonate, because when you think about technology as a overall, right, and then you've got the that's an umbrella, then you've got obviously areas underneath it, right? If we were to sit here and label every single technology job, we'd be here for a while, like explaining what they all are and all the rest of it. So I think it really does go back to that framework, that support, that clarity, what a particular job could be, right? And as you know, across, and I'm sure some people here, if you are passionate about technology, of course, literally across the software development lifecycle, there are so many aspects to it, right? So it's about where you fit in, but also you got to have the passion for it as well. And I think that's been another interesting thing. And I think, Patrick, you mentioned it before, some children, but could be getting pushed into certain careers, right? Like technology. I think the question is, why do you want to go in technology, right? What really intrigues you? What could it look like? And I think if we can really answer that and be very clear with the type of opportunities that exist, I think it will just enable people, and particular graduates or younger or even more mature people that want to go back into the workforce and have a change of career. I think it just gives them that structure, and particular areas that could be of interest, particularly linking, again, the soft skills relevant to the education they'll get on the technical stand front. But if we also look at those individuals that have gone into graduate roles, you're also not just doing one thing. You're learning the business. You're touching different parts of technology as well. So there is an appetite out there, but we also need to be very clear and open, and provide that platform for individuals. And I 100% agree. I think some of the degrees may not be fit for purpose, for particularly where we're going at the moment. And I think the AI perspective, 100%. I think there's new roles popping up every day. We see them. But again, it's about giving that clarity. And again, if we can plug in people to upskill in the right areas where the skill shortages actually exist, I think that's one huge step forward to address, particularly over the next 6, 12, 18 months, where we are expecting to see demand pop up across the marketplace. So does that hopefully answer that question? I don't know if that's maybe changed over the last 5 to 10 years, because skill shortages always exist. I'm sure when people started the computer science degree, did they expect to end up where they are today? I'm sure majority probably would say no. I think that's the other reality. So again, it really highlights the importance of this and what we're talking about today, and that clear, transparent career pathway, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And it's about raising the awareness, and again, highlighting technical skill sets of understanding along with those subsequent soft skills, because again, that's what our customers are wanting, and that's what we're hearing on the day-to-day basis. And even this morning, I came from another event, the conversations are all around soft skills, 100%. So I think people can have a strong foundation, and then you can build it, right? I think that's predominantly what we're all saying and agreeing on right now.
Thanks, Peter. That's excellent. Laura, your perspective from a young person, is technology in the top 10? What's it going to take to get it in the top 10?
Yeah, I know, right? So the top 2 jobs jobs that they're looking at from technology are product management and software engineering. But Yasminka, to your example of your daughter, I just wonder here, is that because they're because they're familiar and because they can relate to them. They know what they are because they've been around for a while. They're not mentioning AI software engineer yet, because I'm not sure that they know what that is. So if we can get more industry into the classroom to support the teachers to say, this is what these jobs actually look like, and this is what would be involved, is where like creme de la creme, Nirvana state would be, I think, to give them the opportunity to play around in the classroom. And the other thing on soft skills is really interesting because it's a whole, so somebody's asked in the chat what age I was talking about. So it's Gen Z that I'm talking about. So 14 to 24-year-olds is the research that we've done for the 92% I referred to before. And that Gen Z, the soft skills there, and I think for those that manage teams that have Gen Zs in them, they're a completely different, or they need to be managed in a completely different way than the 40-year-olds in the business, by way of hybrid working, by way of, they care more about their bodies. They're not going to drink the way that was the old-fashioned way. I used to spend more money on non-alcoholic beer than beer for my old team. So they're fundamentally different in the way that they function as human beings as well. And we actually partner with CBA, and CBA into the platform, they do soft skills for kids. So not financial literacy. They believe so much so in soft skills for Gen Z that they've brought those e-learning modules into the system, which is great, which is awesome. So
Brilliant. Yes, I'm going to come to you next. There's a great comment in the post which talks about 20 years of research, strategy resets and all of that stuff. Like, have we just done that again? Or have we actually produced something here that you think, whilst it's not perfect, is going to actually start to address some of these challenges that have been talked about this morning?
I think what's different about this, PK, is the underlining that it's not that employers aren't missing the tech skills. They're actually looking for a new balance of technical and human skills, and giving some specifics around that, right? I mean, I look at this as a beginning, not an end, obviously. All of this could be completely different in 6 to 12 months, but the point of it is coming up with some tools and ways to look at how work is changing. That's what I think is different about this. And then it's up to the system. We can't just be all navel gazing at these reports in perpetuity. We actually have to do something with this information, and we've got to move with it, right? So this is where I see opportunities, like, to your question, Laura, about is it an issue of familiarity? Absolutely it is. Savannah she's just not familiar with these opportunities, which is why we're about to launch a national campaign that demystifies all of these tech careers. We're going to pull this pathway information in, we managed to time it so that we're going to be able to use this in that campaign. But it's not a one and done. We're going to have to be continually looking at and refreshing these tools for people, because that is now the nature of work. So that's what it is for me, PK. It is, and it's also different now because we have assembled in new ways in the ecosystem. We have the FSO that's bringing us together. We have the state compacts that are drawing us together. We're collaborating in educational models like the Institute of Applied Technology Digital. It's up to us to string all of these things together so that they actually work as a system. If we continue, all of these things in isolation will do nothing. It's how we pull it together that is going to make the difference. And we absolutely need these sorts of evidence-based insights, because we actually don't have that much at this level, in this granular detail. We have a lot of high level, here's a 81,000 gap we're going to need to fill in 10 years, but We need the detail underneath it, and then we need to action it.
And that's a really, like, you make a bunch of great points there, but I think the way you ended up, talking about opportunity and the need for the system to come together, and that this isn't just sort of like government's job or the educator's job, this is everybody's job, I think becomes a really important idea, as we go forwards. And how do we mobilize that? Which I suppose then takes me to sort of like the next question, this need for agility, the need for industry leading. What does that mean? Like, how do we do that? How do we sort of get ourselves into a position whereby industry is actually providing those demand signals in a clear way, and it does it because it wants to do it? What sort of environment do we need to be thinking about there to try and mobilize that? Not quite sure who wants to give that one a go. That's absolutely not on the script, by the way, so you didn't know this question was coming. So who wants to give that a go?
Laura, or do you want me to go?
I was
You're
about
to go.
I can give a quick example of Australia's biggest retailer who do this really well. So I've done some work in the past with them around building capabilities internally. So we have an industry shortage, absolutely, but it's also very important once we have team members into a company, knowing that that's not the last opportunity, or that's not the first and last job that they will potentially and hopefully have within an organization. So we used to help companies transform into different ways of working. And there's a concept called home and delivery, where teams go to work and they deliver into with the delivery team. So cross-functional team. What they do then, though, think about a tech team, is they then go home to learn and grow their capabilities. So you've got software engineers, you've got product managers, and you've got many of them across the business. They come together in their home team to learn and grow their skills. So when they go back to delivery, there is a beautiful horizontal flow across the business of consistency. So they're doing it really well. And I know a lot of other, particularly Aussie companies are working in that way as well, which is great to see. We at Anyway do that as well, although we're not huge, but it still works really well from a growth perspective.
It's a great practical sort of way of getting stuff done, which I definitely want to learn more about. Peter, got some thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think it needs to 100% be a transparent and understanding across all industries, and people speaking up and being open and honest. Because I think if we even take this to the next level, I think there's a leadership gap moving forward, right? And as we know, the generation of workforce is moving down the line, right? And you need that new crop of talent coming through. So I think the whole, commitment to a graduate programs, cadetships, as we've discussed, work experience opportunities to be able to actually see people, to Laura's point, in action, real time, on the floor, and actually give people the opportunity to see if they actually like the career opportunity ahead of them, right? And I think with some of the, obviously the certs and the diplomaship and all the rest of it that FSO provide, I think that can then narrow the gap, because then there's a bit of an investment case there from business and person, the commitment. But there needs to be open communication around it all, because as I said, like, I do speak to organizations that are crying out for graduates, right? They're crying out for it, but there's no point just crying it out to me. It needs to be really led, I believe, from government, educational institutions, I think from the federal government. I think we all play a part in this, particularly from our perspective in terms of the work that we do. 100% there's a facilitation there to play a part in it, right? But everyone needs to come to the table and being open and honest, because again, like I just mentioned before, PK, there is, I think, going to be gaps, probably fast forward 5, 10, 15 years, in terms of people that were given the opportunity to step up, obviously into a tech role initially, but then to probably do more. And that's that career progression perspective. And our data does back that up. There is no clear structures in place in organizations, because unfortunately the last few years has been all around we've got work, let's deliver, and then all of a sudden there's this big funnel of things that have just been absolutely missed. So we need to be careful I think as an industry, as a society, and again, we all got given the opportunity once upon a time, right? And I think it's important we do that for the up and coming generation moving forward.
Thanks, Peter. And Yas, what advice would you give me?
I just don't think we have all the answers right now, PK. I think what the report is showing us around entry-level roles is that that the expectations are changing. We haven't really talked about that today. That is a huge signal that we've all got to be paying attention to. So, all the ideas we've had in the past for how we're going to address this, the rules are changing before we've even fully implemented some of the solutions and ideas we've had before. So we've got to be looking at that very closely. And the signal really is that those transferable skills are more important than ever. So, we've focused a lot on technical skills. We've had lots of conversations about, education needing to deliver these when, really the irony ends up being not really to the degree that we've, been focusing on. It's really about that balance. And I think education, even as it is today, if we change nothing, is actually incredibly well poised to be developing those skills. So how do we lean into that more? How do we contextualize more of that? And build those bridges. And I also think we have to be realistic. I've talked about this before. You cannot possibly simulate everything an employer needs outside of an employment environment. So, a lot of these strategies are great. They're going to create that awareness. They're going to build that confidence. They're going to build those bridges. But people have to get into roles to be, to really understand what that organisation is about and to be really performing there. So we can't put all the pressure on education or on employers. We've got to be meeting in the middle, and we've got to be realistic about what's possible in each of those places to be able to, get people into these careers, and also accept that there are no straight lines, and people are, increasingly pursuing multiple different career paths, right? So I still feel like we know this, but we're still holding on to ideas that belong in a different space and time, and we've got to kind of untether that as well.
If I was to distill that, I'd say there are lots and lots of moving objects, moving policy objects, moving, real desire to sort of like shift the system and to update the system and modernize it. That won't happen overnight. And I think our obligation is to make sure we recognize that uncertainty and we design for that uncertainty so that we can accommodate the shocks and changes that inevitably are going to appear in this space. So but I think the really great insights again.
And they're going to accelerate. They are going to accelerate.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Rachel, I'm going to pass to Rachel, who's been pivotal in this team in terms of just driving this work. So Rachel Kerrigan, I think we've got a chance for a couple of questions. Then I'm going to revert back to Betsy just at the end of this session and just ask her to give us some reflections on what she's heard and then how that links to the report. So we've got another, not long to go, 10 minutes or so. So let's see how far we get. Rachel.
Thanks, PK, and thank you. This has been an awesome conversation, and there's been some really great questions in the chat. So I'm going to pull some of those together and throw them at a few of you to answer. One of the questions was around linking sort of Yasminka to the expectations of roles changing and how that the system is shifting from one that sort of needs to organise training around occupations and qualifications to one that should organise for learning, planning, mobility and transferability of skills. How do you think we help young people see themselves in tech careers if all this stuff is shifting? So we're asking industry to shift, we're asking training to shift. How do you think young people and people wanting to come into tech can actually see those skills and see themselves in a tech role?
Yeah, I think it's about humanizing those roles actually, and helping young people connect their personal interests and their attributes to roles. We don't really surface that very well. I'd say we don't do that very well in any industry, but particularly in tech. And a lot of this sort of lack of information is actually on the tech industry. We just have not done a good job of explaining what these jobs are, and what kinds of human, skills we need in them. So, this is part of what I'm talking about in terms of we have to be taking steps toward making some of this clearer for people. And I think when we do, that young people will relate to these jobs better, because we will start using terms like creativity and problem solving and teamwork, which they don't see that at the moment when we talk about these roles, right? We're using very technical language. It doesn't feel like it's a human role most of the time, so why would they be interested in it? And I would say the same thing applies to a career switcher. If you've been a teacher and you're starting to look at some potential tech roles, you need to be able to understand and articulate your skill set relative to those roles. But where is that language? That's the other thing we haven't talked about, PK, is that common language, right? That everybody can understand. That is absolutely critical in addressing all of this. Is we don't speak the same language. Most people can't articulate their own transferable skills. They don't know what they're really looking at in job descriptions. So, we've got a lot of missed opportunities.
100% agree. And that's why some of this work's so important, especially to get that, as you said, that common language. So just building off that a little bit, I might throw to you, Laura. You were talking about the top 10 roles that a lot of young people and students are looking at moving into. Do you think that one of the questions that comes through is around how occupations are associated often with stereotypes, and that creates sort of a hard shift in people's thinking? So if we focus more on that common language and building on what Yasminka said, to sort of think about describing roles as capabilities and skills that are also gender agnostic, do you think that would open up those job roles to people, to young people, and have more interest in those areas?
Yeah, I actually just wrote down build capability right in front of me here. So, which is a shameless plug, but is the whole ethos of what we are trying to solve from an Anyway perspective. So we are trying to build capability in young people so that they can have more certainty when they are going out into the workforce, because they just don't know, and they don't know what's out there. So they are picking what is familiar to them, and they don't know how to get there unless dad's doing it or mum's doing something, or has a friend that is in that career. They may not even know that something exists. And I mean, if you think about stereotypes as well, stereotypes of tech are typically male, and wearing a hoodie in your basement and coding all day is what the stereotype is for tech. But when you think about what we know now as tech careers, and the amount of companies now, like retailers, that are actually calling themselves tech companies, has completely shifted the whole Rubik's Cube for for young people going out there and finding their way. Like, I think every single company that is out there now has some way, shape, or form of a tech role and a pathway into tech. And it's just a matter of giving visibility into what's your passion, where do you want to go, what drives you, what gets you out of bed, and then finding that right company through Peter so that they can then go and go and work for what they want to do. There you go, Peter. You're welcome.
And I think that's it's just one thing on that, and I love what's being said about the common terminology used and all the rest of it. But I think there also needs to be an onus from a HR perspective, because we deal with a lot of customers and talk about workforce planning. What does that look like? All the rest of it, right? So there needs to be that education piece, because technology individuals have started in a way and have continued in a way, right? Organizations may also need to look at investing a stronger support network. We keep talking about framework support and all the rest of it. And as we unpacking this, should HR lean in a lot more with technology to work with them to really iron out what all the great ideas and concepts that have been getting surfaced today? Just as a bit of a thinking bubble there, but I think there's a massive opportunity even outside of just the technology lens, because we can't blame them all, right? They are changing the world, of course.
You just answered the question I was going to ask you about what we can do about changing the way people look at hiring, Peter. So just noting time, I might throw back to you, PK. Oh, you're on mute, PK.
Sorry, apologies for that. Thanks for that, Rachel. Betsy, going to go to you. 3 points, no more than that. We've got 4 minutes. We're going to close. So 3 reflections on this conversation.
Oh, 3 points. You're breaking my heart. Okay. Thank you so much to the panel for your insights and discussion. What I heard coming through was, I love, Yasminka, that we need a new mindset on how we present these pathways as a system. Humanizing these roles, and Laura, to your point, breeding that confidence and ditching the stereotypes. It needs a story. Pathways won't just sit here. They need the learning and the feel to help with that desperate need of Gen Z and others. And Peter, I'm so glad you mentioned career changers as well. As entry doesn't just mean entry when you start. It's entry at all levels of the profession. And we know that career changers are on the rise in record numbers in tech. Lastly, we need to meet in the middle and actively make decisions that support these evidence-based signals. And there's a real opportunity now to advocate for continuing this work. As we've all said, this is just the start, but it is helping us define and help shape and support the skills that industry actually needs, and also where we want to forecast to in the future. So I noticed in the chat there was a question around regions and how do we support the regions? Well, you can break this data down by region, by state, by city. And we are seeing, consistent patterns across infrastructure projects versus, big projects in tech in the metro areas. So there's ongoing opportunity enabling through this work, and ultimately a chance for us to support Australia's future capability. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Betsy. I'm going to close it. Just a couple of quick comments from me, and then just to thank everybody. Awareness. This is about fundamentally real people, trying to connect real people to real opportunities. And so whatever this is, whatever we've done here and the other work that we do, it's about how do we communicate that in a way that is going to be useful. And that's not only to people who are the technology professionals of the future, but it's also to the people who are going to be delivering this training in our universities and in our vet system. So that's really important. We think about the whole and not the part. The balance between skills, human skills, enabling skills, technical skills, that's fundamental. So I think being really clear about that. And I certainly think that the work that's been done by Betsy and her team very much gets to that particular piece. And I think the idea of the fact that, this is the start point, and therefore we need to keep moving. So if this is right, if we're in the right place, we now need to consolidate on where we're at, and we now need to work out what phase 2 of this looks like. And to do that, we need sort of industry to help. So, I think I'm looking for more leaning in from industry to help really consolidate this, so it becomes a practical, pragmatic tool that can be used to help drive the design of qualifications. In terms of the work that we're doing, we are now looking or resetting, if you like, the ICT training package against these pathways. So we don't talk about Cert 4s in ICT. We'll start to talk about real things that make real sense to real people. And we would see the same application being applied to other areas of the education training system as we go forward. So thank you very much indeed, panelists. Thank you to the team that have organised this event. Thank you to the team, Betsy, and in the FSO that has done the work to get this report on. It's the start. It's not the beginning, but it's great to start. So thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks all.